No doubt you guys are wondering what the hell I'm tilting through. Well, that, my friends, is my entire Skylanders collection. I'm going to show you every figurine I own for my 250 subscriber special, which is a quarter of the way to 1,000 subscribers, so that's a huge milestone for me to hit, and I thank every last one of you for helping me achieve such a great number. I mean, like, I know in terms of the YouTube hierarchy, it's not really off that much, but it means the world to me, and I appreciate every last one of you for it. Like, truly, words cannot compensate for my gratitude I'm feeling. It's insane. But as I digress, this is every single in-game Skylander available from the entirety of the franchise. The only thing that isn't included here are a few of the traps that I'm missing, but I'm not going to be collecting those alongside the trace variants purely because I don't have enough interest, especially when it comes to the expensive ones, you know, shelling out a few hundred of pounds just for a Skylander that looks different on the figurine and what it does in the game. Yeah, not exactly my kind of cup of tea right there. I'm not that much of a die-hard collector, which is surprising coming from me. But as I digress, we're going to go through every single collection here. And as I showcase each figurine, any of them that have any sort of interesting backstories as to how I acquired them shall be expressed. Therefore, this is definitely going to make for a long and exciting video. So without further ado, we're going to start with the first collection, Spyros Adventure. So we're going to start off with the Skylanders that don't really have much of a story to them besides the fact that I bought them at some point or another. So that starts off with, of course, Camo. Then we get to move on to Legendary Spyro. Then there's also going to be Series 1 Hex, who actually has both of her limbs attached, so that's quite rare and pretty cool of me, mind you. And there's also Prison Break, followed by none other than Double Trouble. And then there's going to be Warnado right here, followed by Whamshell. Then there's Chop Chop, followed by, well, it was Legendary Chop Chop more specifically, but that would be followed by Legendary Trigger Happy. Then there was also Whirlwind. And last but not least, we have one Legendary Bash. Now I do actually remember my experience of buying this character, because basically I was at CEX, and when I bought him, the cashier was talking to me about Skylanders, about how he had his own collection, and that he felt like the Legendary Bash was so much more cooler than the original colour palette, which of course I agree with, and it was very cool to run into a cashier at CEX who had as much of a passion for Skylanders as I did, mind you. But now we get to move on to the Skylanders that all have a story behind them, and of course, since this is Spyros Adventure, the starter pack characters, i.e. Spyro, Gilgrunt and Trigger Happy, all have the same story to them as the story that got me into Skylanders to begin with. So it was Christmas of 2011. Prior to the celebration, me and my sister made our traditional Christmas list that composed of my mum getting me and her a free Argos catalogue each, and then we'd cut out all of the toys and gifts from the Argos catalogue that we wanted and would stick these cutouts onto a sheet of paper and call that our Christmas list. But with my Christmas list, not only did I cut out the starter pack of Spyros Adventure and glue that to the paper, that was not nearly enough. I also circled it several times and added many arrows pointing to the fact that Skylanders Spyros Adventure was what I was most passionate about and what I wanted most. So Christmas Day finally arrived, and I was very grateful for the great many gifts that I got that holiday season, including a Cars 2 orb puzzle based thing, which will come into account later on. But for now, what this concerns is the fact that Spyros Adventure was the one thing that I didn't get, despite the fact it was the thing that I wanted the most, and I wound up quite disappointed by that. But then my grandparents show up and give me a very specific shaped present. So when I start unraveling it, my pure excitement and adrenaline kicks in as I reveal that I got the Spyros Adventure starter pack for the Nintendo Wii from my grandparents. I was ecstatic and loved them for it. So going from slight disappointment to utter joy made it one of the most memorable Christmases ever, because I got a gift that has lasted me over 10 years now, and one that I've been very passionate and have loved since then, not 10 years, I meant to say 8, but as I digress. The very next day would have been Boxing Day, and my uncle also got me a Skylanders-based gift. It was the Dark Light Crypt, which of course contained a Ghost Roaster in it. So this was back when me and my dad used to play Skylanders together. Ghost Roaster very quickly became his personal favourite Skylander. And a few weeks later, this would have been drawn for New Year, so all the way back in 2012. For Christmas, I also got £20 in Christmas money, so I wound up spending half of that on a single Skylander, that being Boomer. So at this time, Skylanders were very rare, so we checked out 2 different Tesco's and neither of them had a single Skylander in sight. So we finally managed to check out Argos, and they had one in stock. But the thing with Argos back then is that it was pretty random which character you got. You didn't actually know which Skylander it was going to be until you went to go and pick them up. So of course we ordered Boomer and then found out that was him once we collected him, mind you. Very exciting, and my first single pack Skylander, which I bought with half of my Christmas money. But after that, Skylanders didn't really start appearing again until March. So we had a complete dry season of Skylanders whatsoever and couldn't find any because all of the eBay haulers had bought them all up and were selling them for ridiculous prices online. But then, on one fateful day, Loughborough Argos had one Skylander in stock, and once my mum picked it up, turns out that was Dynarang, and this was a character that I bought with the other half of my Christmas money that I had been saving for the last 3 months in order to get a Skylander with. So I was pretty excited. But on the same day, the second most local Argos was Colville. So Colville had one triple pack in stock, which just so happened to be the one concerning Eruptor, Chop Chop and Bash. So after my mum left Argos, a woman approached her and offered her £40 for the triple pack, despite the fact that it was worth 20 at the time. So it's effectively double what my mum paid for it, and she refused the offer, knowing that these pieces of plastic, so to say, were very rare and precious to me. So she held on to them because she knew I wanted them, and she knew that I wasn't going to be able to get any more for a while due to just how rare and hard to come by these toys wound up being. And I'm very grateful that my mum did such a thing, and she refused the offer despite the fact that it was literally double that she paid right now. So Bash, Chop Chop and Eruptor managed to join my collection, but I was still missing 2 elements, air and life. But one day I came home from school and there was a plastic bag waiting for me on the sofa. Well, it turns out my mum had gone to Argos to pick up an air and a life Skylander so that I could 100% the game. They came in the form of Sonic Boom and Stealth Elf, which me and my sister were ecstatic about because we each got one Skylander. We were both really looking forward to getting Stealth Elf for my sister and Sonic Boom for myself, although in actuality I actually enjoyed Stealth Elf much more. But yes, it was great to finally be able to 100% the game, but my Skylanders collecting didn't end there. So one day after school, my mum was at a car boot sale, and she called in my dad asking if he could ask me whether I needed either Eruptor, which I didn't because I had that one already, or Wrecking Ball. Of course, I answered my dad saying that I needed Wrecking Ball, so my mum bought this character from a car boot sale for me, but this was just before my karate session that same day. So what wound up happening is that we were in the last 5 minutes of karate where we had to basically sit bowing in silence and everything, but I was distracted during this whole celebration of the end of the lesson, you could say, if that makes any sort of sense. So I was distracted purely because my sister had came in with Wrecking Ball and I was playing and fiddling around with him right in front of my very eyes to kind of divert my attention away from the ceremony that was going on at my karate class right now. So I just found it funny how I was distracted from karate because of this character, which when I got home even, I started playing with him and was pretty disappointed, unfortunately. But now we get to move on to the first Skylander I actually bought with my own money, Zap. So I was saving up pocket money for months, and then I was finally able to afford my very own Skylander, to which once again Skylanders were still quite rare, so I managed to get this one in Argos, and it was the last one left. So fortunately it was one that I needed, so I managed to get Zap successfully. I did attempt this previously when Argos at Colville once again had one in stock, but that was unfortunately Dynarang because it was random, so I had to wait another few weeks even until the Argos at Loughborough got a Skylander in stock, and that Skylander was Zap right here. But as I digress, towards May, Skylanders were of course becoming much more frequent, and I went to Tesco once and they had a bunch of single packs, mostly of Double Trouble and Boomer. But they did have one triple pack in stock, which I really wanted because it looked so awesome, and that was a triple pack concerning these characters right here: Flame Slinger, Drobot, and Stump Smash. So I practically begged my mum to get it for me, and she obliged, so she bought this triple pack for me out of the goodness of her own heart. That, and also she wanted me to do a few chores to earn it, so I wound up cleaning through the house, you know, hoovering, mopping, that sort of stuff. But in the end it was of course worth it because these are some awesome characters, and I'm very grateful that my mum picked those up for me. But if you ignore the Skylanders at the back, which I started, of course, collecting together between this point and the start of 2015, I basically only had 16 characters at this point, which was halfway through the original cast. So this was a very exciting turnaround for my collecting business, especially in May, with Skylanders Giants having already been announced and right around the corner. But with that being said and done, we went to a barbecue of my mum's friends one day, and my mum gave me and my sister a challenge, and if we were to complete this challenge even, she would give us a reward. In my case it was a Skylander, and my sister's, I think she got this bead set or something like that. The point is, what we had to do is there was two gardens right next to us, so we had to go across one garden without touching the ground, and to do that we would just take the deck chairs, climb across them, and then once we got over one of them we'd just lift it up and put it back in front of us, then go to it and take one that we was previously on, but now we've moved on from it. We'll take that and put that in front of us again. So it's basically just a loop of taking deck chairs and doing that with it, in other words. But as I digress, we had to get across this garden in order to acquire a rose from one of the neighbours, but obviously we needed permission from both of the neighbours in order to invest in this challenge. But me and my sister were so polite when we went to the neighbour's house that the neighbour just gave us a rose right off the bat without us needing to even attempt the challenge. And because of how polite me and my sister were, my mum basically wound up rewarding us anyway. So originally I was supposed to be getting Whirlwind and Double Trouble, two single pack characters, but as we was walking down the grocery aisle we came across a triple pack which some kid had obviously moved, and that was including none other than Zook, Lightning Rod and Cinder. So my mum said you can pick up this pack instead because I think it was only like £4 more at the time. So I managed to get an extra Skylander for an extra £4, and I had no problem with that whatsoever because these Skylanders looked awesome and I couldn't wait to play as them. So yes, very interesting story behind that triple pack right there. And now we come up to my birthday of 2012. So this is before Skylanders Giants had released, because I think that released late October of that year. Meanwhile, my birthday was on the 2nd of October, so it was 2 or 3 odd weeks before Giants that came out. And I asked my grandparents for a triple pack involving Igniter, Camo and Warnado, but as you can see from Warnado and Camo haven't already been mentioned, they were unable to get that triple pack. So instead they managed to find me for Empire of Ice, which was very exciting indeed. It was my second adventure pack right after the Dark Light Crypt, so it was nice to finally have unlocked a new level in that game. But anyway, Giants was only a week away and I got £20 birthday money, so I could have saved that money and waited for Giants to come out so I could have got more figurines for that game. But instead, impatient 11-year-old me just had to get a Skylander then and there, so I wound up getting the Pirate Seas that of course came with Terrafin, and I ultimately wound up quite disappointed because Terrafin wasn't that great of a Skylander in my personal opinion, and neither was the level of Pirate Seas either. But as you can tell, I'm now only a few Skylanders away from completing the collection. So between my birthday and Giants being released, we went to Blackpool during October, and we went into one of the Toy Masters where they had a bunch of Skylanders stocked up, including one that I was looking for a while, Voodoo. So I got very excited, and my mum wanted to buy him for me because my parents like to buy things from holidays for us to remember the holidays by. So in that case, the Blackpool holiday of 2012 was Voodoo. So that's what I remember that entire holiday about, finding Voodoo at a Toy Master. But as I digress, we've now skipped over Giants entirely and are moving into the Swap Force area, so around the 2014 period. I only have a few Skylanders left that I still need, one of which is the first iteration of Drill Sergeant. Bearing in mind I had a primary school friend who, shall we just say, forged a lie about this character. He said he transformed into a train, which he kind of does with this design element up in front of him here, but he didn't transform into a fully fledged trainer, at least not the way how I thought he meant it. So it wasn't until I finally found this figurine that I could expose him for his lies, so to say. But regardless, I found him at in the Swap Force section even from Tesco, so I was with my grandparents at the time and they was generous enough to buy him for me. But yes, so it was very strange to see a character all the way from Spyros Adventure, a line which they was no longer manufacturing, in the Swap Force lineup, but he had a bunch of tape on his package, so I'm going to assume that what happened is that somebody had attempted to steal the figurine previously, got caught, and they were repackaging it up and forgot to put it back on the shelf until that point in time. But he was stuck behind a bunch of stink bombs, so it could have just been that nobody found him until I was the fortunate soul who did. But as I digress, my birthday of 2014 came up. I only needed 3 more Skylanders and one of them was Sunburn. So I organised a little birthday get-together with me and my mates. We went to the cinema to see, I can't remember what film it was, from 2014. But afterwards we went to the local CEX and I saw the Dragon's Peak on display for exactly £10. Now one of my friends had given me a birthday card and I knew that there was a tenner in it because she had said so before the movie even began. So I opened up the birthday card then and there to take the tenner out of it and pay for the Dragon's Peak. But regardless, with 2 Skylanders left, the thing that they had in common is that both Dark, Spyro and Igniter were both available in the 3DS starter pack for Spyro's Adventure, but at the time it was still going for around 20 or 30 odd quid, and of course I didn't have that kind of money up my sleeves. So it wasn't until around the 2015 mark that I managed to find this for a really cheap price at one of my local exchange shops, which was selling it brand new for £8. I had exactly £7.90, but they let me off with 10 pence, so I managed to get a brand new 3DS starter pack, which included the last 2 Skylanders I needed, Dark Spyro and Series 1 Igniter. Very ironic how one of my favourite Skylander even from this lineup was the very last one that I got, alongside that Dark Spyro, mind you. But yes, I was very excited to have completed the collection. And that basically does it for all of the stories as to how I got these 37 incredible characters from that original game. So without further ado, we're going to move on to Giants. So now we're going to move on to Giants, and just like I did with Spyro's Adventure, for the first Skylanders I'm going to show you are the ones which don't have any sort of interest and backstory behind them. I literally just bought them at one point or another. And those stories start off with Gnarly T-Rex first and foremost. Then we get to move on to Series 2 Cinder, which I didn't actually get in the starter pack because I got booster pack for Giants, but we'll get more into that later on. Then there's also the one, the only, the awesome legendary Igniter. Then we also have Series 2 Lightning Rod, which I do remember getting him specifically from Morrison's, but that's about it really. And I'm pretty sure it was one of the only Skylanders that I got from Morrison's at that, because they sold them at higher prices than for norm you could say. But regardless, there's also Stealth Elf right there, Series 2 more specifically, as well as Series 2 Wrecking Ball right here. Then there is also one Series 2 Gilgarant, followed by one Light Core Shroom Boom. All this glorious glory, mind you. And speaking of glory, there's also Polar Whirlwind right here, who looks pretty fantastic. Then there's also Series 2 Drill Sergeant, who doesn't nearly have as interesting of a story as Series 1 Drill Sergeant, mind you. Then there is also Scarlet Ninjini. Then there's also one of my least favourite characters from the lineup, Sprocket. Followed up by none other than a Series 2 Terrafin right here, who was in a lot of the trailers and promotion for Skylanders Giants. That was pretty cool. Then we have yet another variant right here, Granite Crusher. And then that's going to be followed up by Regular Chill, who really surprised me because I was not expecting her to be as good as she was, but then I finally got around to buying her, and she was so much more better than I was expecting, hence the surprise. Then we also have one Series 2 Sonic Boom. Then there's also Series 2 Flame Slinger. Followed by Series 2 Bash. Followed by Series 2 Hex, once again one that isn't broken, so that's a miracle. Then there's also one light core robot, followed by light core bouncer. Sorry for the slight jump in the camera right there. Gonna put him towards the back if he doesn't want, if he wants to stop pointing his finger guns at Hex, that is. Then there was also legendary light core chill, which when I first bought her from CEX there was a bit of damage around the neck area until eventually her head popped straight off, so this is a replacement figure. Then there's also one light core prison break. The light core used to promote, well, all the other light cores because he was such a powerful, he had such a powerful light core effect even. Then there's also legendary Jetpack right here, followed by another awesome variant, Shade Flashwing. Then there's also Series 2 Slambam right here, followed by one Light Core Eruptor. Then we have legendary Stealth right here. I was quite disappointed when she got announced as a legendary because at first I didn't like her very much, but now I've grown to really enjoy Stealth. But then we also have one legendary Slambam to go alongside his regular boring iteration. I say the regular iteration is boring, that's a bit of a lie. But now we move on to everyone's favourite character, Jetpack, which I've picked up for 50 pence because A, he's Jetpack, and B, he's a starter pack character that nobody wanted, hence why he was only 50 pence. Then we also have Punch Pop Fizz. And last but not least we have Series 2 Eruptor. So now we can move on to the exciting stories, which of course begins with Skylanders Giants and its day one release of the booster pack. So on day one I was at school, so when I got home from school I wasn't excited about Skylanders Giants because my parents weren't in, so I just assumed that they hadn't bought it for me yet. Completely neglecting to check out the little package on the sofa as I walked in. So I went straight to the dining table and started work on my Cars 2 puzzle orb that I got for the prior Christmas, which I mentioned about when I was talking about the Spyros Adventure starter pack, mind you. But then my dad came in and pointed out the package on the sofa, and so once I noticed it was Skylanders Giants, I immediately put down everything I was doing, aka that puzzle orb, to go on ahead and start playing Skylanders Giants, to which, when I first booted up the game, I started on hard difficulty, which after a while I realised that was a mistake with how slow and weak Trix was to start off with, so I bumped the difficulty back down to easy again. But with that, my birthday came up because not my birthday, my birthday party. I've already mentioned that my birthday came up before Giants, which is the main reason why I got the Pirate Seas rather than waiting. But after Giants was released, which must have been 3 weeks after my birthday at this point, my birthday party came up, and my friend Edward, who I invited, bought me Series 2 Trig Happy. Now before this I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't buy the Series 2 iterations of Skylanders I already owned. I'd only get the Series 2 for Skylanders that never got drawn in Spyros Adventure. But then when Edward had gone and bought me Trig Happy for my birthday, I was just like, screw it, I'm going to get every single Series 2, no matter how expensive it would wind up being, and man did it wind up being expensive. But unfortunately with poor 11-year-old me not having much money, I wasn't really able to buy any Skylanders until Christmas came around, where my parents at Christmas bought me 3 Giants, which started off with Bouncer, Crusher, and of course Swarm, which was my favourite of the 4 that I got so far, and he basically stayed like that for the whole of time. Regardless though, for Skylander I really wanted that Christmas was Fright Rider, and there was one character my parents didn't get me. But on Boxing Day my cousin showed up with a package, well a present I should say, more so than a package, and that present was none other than Fright Rider himself. So yes, it was very awesome of these cousins to get me for one Skylander that I really wanted at Christmas. It blew my mind when I opened up my present, and it was for Skylander that I wanted most of all. But then we move into around about February time. I was at game with my grandparents and I noticed that they had one Hothead in stock. So my grandparents were kind enough to buy him for me, but he wasn't the only Skylander available at game at the time, because there was also Flashwing available, which was the Skylander that my sister really wanted, so she requested that my grandparents buy the Skylander for her. Of course, I got rather annoyed by this because I wanted to complete the collection by myself without my sister's aid in any way, so my sister kind of aided me, and getting me a pity Skylander was really annoying to me, and we kind of argued over it. So moral of the lesson is, if your sister's gonna help you collect Skylanders, don't argue with her about it, especially not in front of your grandparents. That's mean and disrespectful to the elderly. But hey, my grandparents still bought us Skylanders in the future, mind you, so that was great, mind you. And that's not even my sister's Flashwing at this point. It's a completely different Flashwing that I bought for myself, so technically I own that Flashwing 100% these days. But regardless, I also had £20 Christmas money remaining, which I had saved up, and I finally decided it was about time to spend that at game, where they had the Battle Cannon Battle Pack. I forget the name of the cannon, to be perfectly honest, but I do remember what Skylanders came in that pack. It was regular Shroom Room and Series 2 Chop Chop. Now, the unfortunate tale about Series 2 Chop Chop is that unfortunately I lost him at one point, but one day I went into game and I saw that they had him pre-owned for $1.99, so I wound up replacing for Series 2 Chop Chop that I lost quite easily, in fact. But as we move on, I get to continue with my game stories, and the next one is going to involve these two Skylanders right here. So we went into game one day and we noticed that most of the Skylanders were labelled up buy one get one 50% off, whereas these two were labelled up buy one get one free. So I pick up both of these since my mum was willing to buy them both if they was on such a generous offer. But the customers in front of us had the exact same two Skylanders, and the cashier was being very, very disrespectful about it, because obviously these stickers were a mistake. They were meant to be buy one get one 50% off rather than buy one get one free. So the cashier and the customer are arguing and bickering about their own respective rights, and the cashier was not in the wrong here, okay? Some of the rights he was making up was clearly being made on the spot with his nervous breakdown, you could say. So ultimately he was being very, very disrespectful to this boy and their parents, who just wanted to buy these two Skylanders for him. And because of this, my mum told me to put these characters back. We weren't going to buy these characters after the customers in front of us were having such a big problem with them, especially with the cashier being so rude and disrespectful. And after that day, I never saw that cashier ever again, so I take it as he was fired, which is highly deserving, because no customer deserves to be treated that way by an employee. But as we digress, one day I went hunting for Skylanders with my parents around the whole of Loughborough, looking specifically for a Series 2 Bash. We found one of them at game, but what I was ultimately after was a Pop Fizz. So I said to my parents, can we go down Tesco and check if Pop Fizz is there? And they're like, yes, okay, but if they don't have Pop Fizz, you're going to have to deal with the Skylander that they have at Tesco, because we're not coming back here. So I took that risk, and then we got to Tesco and they had one last Pop Fizz left, so the risk paid off and I was able to get Pop Fizz. Well, I say I was able to, my parents bought him for me. From the kindness of their hearts, that was much appreciated. Anyway, next up is going to be Series 2 Double Trouble, which my friend actually sold to me for 50p. That's right, he was so desperate to get rid of Series 2 Double Trouble that he was willing to give him to me for a measly 50p, which I found lying on the floor before I had even got to my mate's house. Like, it was just lying there. I couldn't exactly return it because it didn't exactly have any sort of tracking equipment with it, so I could track down the one person who this random 50p belonged to. So of course I kept it and used it to buy this Series 2 Double Trouble off him. He probably would have charged me more if he knew I had more money at the time, but 50p on Series 2 Double Trouble was especially great value at the time, and it's still great value now, to be perfectly honest. But as we digress, the next Skylander comes from Tesco, just like Pop Fizz did, but this time it was actually my grandparents who bought me Light Court Jetpack, sorry. And this Jetpack was the first version of Jetpack I ever managed to get my hands on, so it was very cool to get Jetpack for the first time, especially since I missed out on him because he wasn't in the booster pack, for regular iteration of him I mean, so yes, that was cool getting Light Court Jetpack all the same. I had a choice between him and Chill, so in retrospect, Chill would have been the better choice. But moving on to another great female Skylander, we have Whirlwind, who I remember so vividly because she was the first Skylander I ever ordered online, because on Amazon it was free shipping and only £5. So £5 for an entire Skylander back then was great value. So of course I ordered it from Amazon, and it arrived even in 2 days. So that was very, very great, and it was in perfect condition, so I was very, very happy about that online order. And since then I have made several online orders with CX in particular, and Light Core Pop Fizz here reminds me highly of CX's terrible ordering scheme, because basically CX are notorious for sending for wrong Skylanders that you order. So when I ordered Light Core Pop Fizz the first time, they sent me regular Pop Fizz instead. So I had to order a secondary Light Core Pop Fizz, tell for people at CX what had happened. It was a middle up, and so if they sent me this Light Core Pop Fizz for free, I only had to pay shipping fees. So that was pretty cool of them. They didn't need to do that. Actually, they did. You know, you can't just send for the wrong item and not have some sort of compensation system in play, but still, most companies would not do that. And as I digress, this Skylander I actually found physically in a CX shop, and it was one of my first ever variants from Skylanders Giants, Molten Hot Dog, which when I saw him on the CX shelf, I internally screamed because he was so rare at the time, and he was only like £6, so that was an insanely awesome find for me to pick up. But anyway, next up comes a really interesting story. So the Skylanders were on sale at Game, and I really wanted the Scorpion Striker battle pack that came with Zap and Hot Dog, but at the time I didn't have enough money. So when I got home, I immediately washed the neighbours' cars and managed to accumulate enough money to buy the pack. But what wound up happening is that when I returned the next day, the Game no longer had that pack in stock, so I instead had to settle with a Thump pack. But hey, I was a-okay with this, because it meant that I only did 2 more Giants in order to complete my Giants collection. And a few weeks later, my mate Edward's birthday was coming up, so he really wanted Prison Break for Series 2 Iteration, more specifically because the posing is so damn cool. So we managed to find him at Game. He was hidden behind a bunch of Series 2 lightning rods. And we got him a few weeks before my mate's birthday party, where I would have obviously given the Skylander, or given him the Skylander even. So it was very hard for me to have this Series 2 Prison Break just sitting on my shelf and resist the urge to open it up and play with him myself. But luckily I did manage to resist, and Edward got his hands on Prison Break just fine. So now we're skipping ahead a couple more months once again, during the summer of 2013 it would have been, just before Swap Force was released, and I was getting a bit bored inside, and I was running out of things to do, so my parents went on ahead and bought me a Giant, which was half price at the time, so then they could keep me entertained for a few hours. So yes, that was very good of them, and it meant that I only needed one last Giant to complete my collection, which at the time was very, very rare. So I had to wait all the way until my birthday, where my parents, for a birthday present, bought me for the final Giant I needed, which was obviously Ninjini. Anyway, my birthday party for next year resulted in a very interesting find. But first we're going to talk about that birthday of 2013 still, where not only did I get Ninjini, but we also got Swap Force a few weeks later, and a pre-order bonus for Swap Force was Light Core Hex, so I was able to pick that up as a pre-order bonus even. But this Light Core Hex isn't the same as that one I got for the pre-order bonus, because that one broke, so this is a replacement. But as I get back to my birthday party of 2014, almost an entire 11.5 months later, in fact there's no almost about it, that's exactly what it was, the same birthday party that I got Sunburn from afterward, was when Edward had bought me none other than Series 2 Igniter, because I really wanted him at the time. And so finally, after having received my first iteration of Igniter, I started playing with this character, and I fell in love with him instantly. At the time, because Swap Force was out during this time, Small Dash was my favourite character. So until I got this first iteration of Igniter, Small Dash was my favourite. It's an interesting story about that. But as I digress, my most recent trip to Blackpool from October of 2015 hailed a very interesting find. So if you remember previously, I was talking about how I was unable to get the Scorpion Striker battle pack previously because it ran out of stock at Game and they never restocked it for whatever reason. But when I was at Blackpool, sorry about that, but when I was at Blackpool we went to a bit of a market, And on this market they had for Scorpion Striker available, brand new for £3. So for the sake of £3, my parents did not mind buying me this pack, and so I was able to get this pack brand new for such a cheap price at the time. Like back in 2015, £3 for this pack was very, very valuable indeed, especially to me personally, who really wanted those figurines in specific. So now we've moved down to the final 3 Skylanders that I need from this collection. So 2 of them, and in order to get them I need to get imported because they were never released in Europe, and that is my very valuable and precious Series 2 Jawbreaker and Royal Double Trouble. It was so insanely cool when these guys arrived in the mail because I was able to open up their packages. Series 2 Jawbreaker I even did an unboxing for, and it was just so cool to see these figures. I did get Royal Double Trouble long before I did get Series 2 Jawbreaker, but these were still bought around a similar time, and of course bought in a similar manner in the fact that I had to get them imported. One from, I think it was China, whereas the other one was from America. So now it has brought me to one final Skylander that I need in order to complete this collection, Light Core Chill. So one day when we was in Wellingborough, we went to one of the local CXs down there, and I managed to find a Light Core Chill. I would have bought her online if it weren't for the fact that she was completely out of stock, and the main reason why she was out of stock everywhere was because this at the shop was labelled as a legendary Light Core Chill rather than the regular iteration, so I wasn't going to be able to order her because the online store wasn't able to distinguish between the two. Quite hilarious that. But yes, I was able to pick her up for a really cheap price of £1.99 because the legendary Light Core Chill was cheaper than the regular Light Core Chill at that time. So once again I internally screamed, similar to what I did with Molten Hot Dog right there. Sorry, I kind of got a bit lost for words, but as I digress, I was internally screaming at that because I had finally completed my Giants collection after having found the one Skylander that I still needed, Light Core Chill. And even more interesting about that holiday yet in Wellingborough, it was also when I recorded my first ever collaboration. That was with Jap28 for the guest stars that would be really awesome in Skylanders. So I'm going to play you a little clip to help commemorate that holiday now, but after that's played we're going to be moving on to Swap 4.
Hey there guys, this is Untitled Fire, and I'm going to holiday in Bridlington. I cannot see a thing right now, hold on a sec guys. Whew, that's much better. How the hell can Sly see anything through those things? But either way, as you guys could probably guess from my custom-made Sly Cooper Imaginator that you saw in the intro right there, the guest star I'd personally choose for a Skylanders game is none other than Sly Cooper.
Everybody be cool. I'm on it.
So this is primarily because the first Sly Cooper game, known as Sly Cooper and Phoebus Raccoonus, was my first ever video game of all time, so I kind of have a soft spot for Sly, you can say. But not only that, but he's acquired a lot of moves throughout his franchise history, meaning that he could make very really diverse and really fun moveset. That would be a ton of fun to use, and on top of that, he could make a really awesome light figure thanks to the help of his cane and his statistics. And so this would mean that he would not only fit in with the cast of Skylanders, but also add to it, and so that's personally why I definitely feel like this guy would make a great light ninja and should definitely be a guest star in whatever Skylanders games to come next.
So without further ado, we're going to be getting into Swap Force now, and we're going to be starting off with the Skylanders that don't have any sort of interest and story behind them as to how I got them. I literally just picked them up at some point or another. So that's going to start us off with a Light Core Flashwing, and might I just say that it's going to be very interesting to see if I can even squeeze all of these Skylanders in frame right now. But next up is going to be none other than legendary Light Core Grim Creeper. Then we move on to regular old Grim Creeper. Then there's also going to be legendary Night Shift, another legendary mind you. Then we have none other than Punk Shock, one of my personal favourite cores in this game. It's unfortunate how we don't have some sort of awesome story to go alongside it, but regardless, next up is going to be regular Night Shift. I intended to get him in his double pack, but instead I just wound up getting both of the swappers in that pack, which I believe was Night Shift and Boom Jet respectively. So I got both of them solo, but as I digress, we move on to another legendary, that being legendary Free Ranger. Then we have Phantom Cinder, which was originally going to be its very own episode of Skylanders Hunting, where I picked her up at CEX randomly one time, but then the video files corrupted and I weren't able to ever release that video. But as I digress, we have Free Ranger next. Then we have Luke's favourite Skylander, Roller Brawl, and she's one of my personal favourites too. Yet another Skylander just like Chill, which I wasn't all looking that forward to, but then when I finally picked her up, she blew my expectations out of the water. And speaking of water, we have Freeze Blade off the water element coming up next. Then we also have Rubble Arouser, followed by Big Bang Trigger Happy, now that the reposes have their very own unique name going in front of them rather than just being Series 2, 3, 4, etc. Actually, there was no such thing as a Series 4 in this game, but as I digress, we have none other than Light Core Countdown. Then we also have one Blizzard Chill, followed by Legendary Zulu. Then we also have Light Core Star Strike. Now that's regular Star Strike, the two look so similar that I can barely tell them apart, but I can guarantee to you that that is indeed regular Star Strike. And moving on, we have none other than Hoot Loop, followed by Enchanted Hoot Loop. Then we have Spyros, followed by Frino. One of the last characters I actually got in this game, because I got the Hogwild iteration long before I got that version, so I never prioritised getting that version of him, mind you. But next up, we have Heavy Duty Sprocket, followed by Twin Blade Chop Chop. Then we also have Volcanic Lava Bath Eruptor, which I got him as part of the 3DS Starter Pack for the first time. Bit similar to how I saved for 3DS Starter Pack to get Dark Sparrow and Ignited from Spyros Adventure. But next up is going to be Super Cool Pop Fizz, showing us back towards the camera and getting that sweet old 360 degrees in. Then next up is going to be none other than Anchors Away Gilgrunt. Big oops. And then next up is going to be Jolly Bumble Blast. I was just pointing out to you guys right there, what can I say except you're welcome. But moving on, we have regular Firecracken. Then we next up have Lava Bath Eruptor. Then we have Mega Ram Spyro, who seems to be ramming his way onto the desk right now. Then there is regular old Magna Charge, which I picked up from CX just before I watched Finding Dory, mind you. The last film I saw at Odeon until I watched Dragon Ball last year. Anyway, then there's also Kickoff Countdown right there. Smolder Dash, who is a replacement from the CX at Leicester, because my original one kind of lost its flair, you could say. Then next up is going to be Springtime Trigger Happy. Then we have Trap Shadow, one of the very last swappers I got from this game, in fact one of the last characters period. Then we have regular Countdown. And last but not least, from the story, from the characters lacking a story as to how I got them, we have Enchanted Star Strike. Although I do remember buying a bunch of things from CEX and then walking into game and instantly regretting my purchases in CEX, because it meant that I was no longer able to afford Enchanted Star Strike, so I wound up returning all of my items to CEX in order to get my money back to pay for Enchanted Star Strike from game, mind you. And she was only $1.99 as well, so that was a bit of a bargain, mind you. But now we can finally move into the stories of the other Skylanders and move on to a bit of a timeline with those. So of course the first characters I got were the Skylanders from the Starter Pack, so that would include Washbuckler, Blast Zone and Stealth Elf alike. Of course I also got Light Core Hex on this day as a pre-order bonus for the game. Then next up, from my Blackpool trip in 2013, 1 year after I got the Voodoo, mind you, I was with my grandparents for this trip. And this time it was my grandparents who bought me Slobbertooth from a HMV at Blackpool, where he was £12 rather than £10 because HMV is overly expensive. But anyway, after that, with me not having much money to my name, I had to wait till Christmas to get more Skylanders. But fortunately for me, the haul I got from Christmas 2013 was my biggest Skylanders haul yet, with me receiving Light Core Warnado, Light Core Smolderdash, which is why she was my favourite until I got Igniter for the first time on my birthday of 2014. Then we have Sharpshooter Terrafin, which obviously I picked up alongside Bumble Blast as part of the Archean, not Archean Crossbow, the Archean Forge, if that's its name. Then I also got the Tower of Time, which of course included a cute little pop form right here. Then next up was a double pack. Now, up until this point, I wasn't interested in collecting variants, but then my parents got me the Nitro Battle Charge and Rattle Shake double pack. So after this moment, I decided, screw it, let's be collecting variants as well. So let's pop them to the back right there. So I also got £20 for Christmas, and I remember just before Christmas I went to go to game and I found an Archean crossbow, which is the battle pack I wanted more than the other one. But when my parents went shopping, they said that they couldn't find it, so I knew that for Christmas I was going to be getting the other battle pack rather than this one. But what did it matter? Because after the new year I found an online store which had buy one get one free on all of the new Skylanders packs. So this was the whole of wave 3, so I was able with my £20 of Christmas money to get me Wind Up, Camo, which was my very first illustration of Camo by the way, and Grim Creeper from the Archean Crossbow and the Sheepwreck Islands Adventure and Battle packs respectively. So it was very cool for me to get buy one get one free on those. And because it was an online store only, once again I had them ordered in, but it didn't take all that long, so that was quite impressive. Now the next story involves Game. What happened with Game is that I went in one day and they had a restock of all sorts of new Skylanders, including Light Core Whamshell. Now my attention was drawn to the Skylander when there was someone in the store yelling about how, oh man, my favourite character from Spyros Adventure gets re-released and I don't have the money. Although they didn't say just for money, they included the effing word in there as well. But as I digress, I looked all over the store and I couldn't find a secondary Light Core Whamshell because this kid was kind of like holding on to the other one. I didn't want to ask for him to give it to me if he weren't going to be able to pay for it. But in the end I started looking behind a few of the other packs and it turns out this guy was hiding behind a bunch of Light Core Warnados. So unfortunately I was £2 off getting him with my own money this time, so my mum just said screw it, for the sake of £2 I will give you that money and you can buy the character. So that's how I got my first ever version of Whamshell, and that's why I was so desperate to get him, because I didn't own him up until that point. Then next up we have Scorp, which once again is a character that I bought with my own money. One time I was at my grandma's and I got a bit bored because all of my electronics had died out, so I decided to make the decision to walk up to the local Tesco and pick this character up. Then we have Doomstone. Now when this guy was first released they had offers going on at Game for swappers at half price. Now at the time I didn't buy him because basically my dad was encouraging me to save up all of my pocket money for a PS3. So it was actually my grandma who came in with me for the following week who bought this guy. But remember, his packaging was so loose that I actually threw the packaging up and it completely split, and the figurine went flying, you could say, so I had to pick him up immediately. And my grandma wasn't very impressed, she thought it was my fault somehow. Anyway, I went on another holiday to somewhere in Scotland, I can't remember its name, but there was a game there where I was able to pick up Stink Bomb, once again for half price. My dad bought it for me, so that then I had something to entertain me once we got back to the caravan site, mind you, because this in the caravans we had electricity, so I was able to play Skylanders and everything. So next up are 3 Skylanders that I was able to get for buy one get one free. So I got all of these figures, well they weren't only buy one get one free, they were half price as well. So I got all of these for about £9 I think it was. So it started off with Light Core Star Strike, then we got Dunebug, followed by Zulu, And then last but not least, we got Riptide. Now all of these were from game, and we're going to stick with game because this is the same store just on a different day. I went to their pre-owned section and they had all 5 Dark Skylanders available in pre-owned, bearing in mind that they had the 3 for 2 offering back then. So I was able to pick up these and the Series 1 Warnado, which I just quickly breezed over during my Spyros Adventure collection breakdown. And so they of course included Dark Spyro, well, Dark Mega Ram Spyro more specifically, Dark Blast Zone, Dark Washbuckler, Dark Slobbertooth, and finally, last but not least, Dark Stealth Elf. So yeah, that was very, very cool, and even better yet, I had now got the PS3, and this was just before Trap Team was released. So Trap Team finally came out, I got my starter pack, but the PS3 was from eBay and it was incredibly faulty, and because of that it would basically turn off every 5 minutes, so I weren't able to beat Trap Team very effectively, and that was very disheartening for me at the time, you know, day 1 Trap Team, and I weren't able to complete it because my PS3 was faulty. But that still didn't stop me from getting Skylanders at the time, because I went into CX and found a really cheap Skylander that October in the form of Gorilla Driller. And I remember this guy so vividly because I was so disappointed I couldn't play with him on the Trap Team game. But one day I went to my cousin's and realised that in the Wii version of the starter pack you got a code that allowed you to download the Trap Team Wii U version for free from the eShop. So I utilised that code to basically get the whole game on my Wii U for free. And then my PS3 portal from the PS3 starter pack I bought was transferable over to the Wii U. All of this was not in October, it was way after Christmas when I got the Wii U, Christmas of 2014 mind you. And that's ultimately what led me to finally be able to play with Gorilla Driller, and I was very disappointed, unfortunately. Anyway, next up comes Scratch, because I was mentioning previously about Christmas of 2014, I effectively got Gorilla Driller before Christmas 2014, but I had to wait till after Christmas of 2014 to finally play him. But Scratch, however, I saw at a CEX, and at the time she was very rare. So what my mum did even is she bought this character for me from CEX, and then I had to wait for Christmas until she actually gave me the figure. So that's an interesting story in and of itself. Now the next figurine is Rattle Shake. Now when I bought my Skylanders Trap Team starter pack, they put me up for a club card. And basically this Skylanders club card meant that if you bought a certain number of Skylanders, then you'd get Quick Draw Rattle Shake for free. So that's exactly how I got this guy. I got this guy for absolute free after I bought, I think it was 15 other Skylanders. Anyway, so the next few stories take place very recently actually. Firebone Hot Dog I was incredibly dedicated to getting because I saw him at the pre-owned section game, and at the time I didn't have any money, so well, I did have the money, it was just in my wallet which was at home, so I decided, hey, let's cycle home so I can grab my wallet and pay for this guy from a pre-owned section at game. But on my way home, I fell off my bike, cut myself open, and had to stay at my grandma's in order to patch that up. Which ultimately was a great decision in the end, because my grandparents gave me the money in order for me to go back into town and pick this guy up from pre-owned. And there's a whole Skylanders hunting video documenting this dedication, so that's very special to me as well. So next up, we're moving all the way to Imaginators, where there was a Champions pack involving Zulu, which you can see all the way back here, and of course these two characters, Hyper Beam Prison Break and Hornblast Whirlwind, which I managed to pick up that Champions pack for £5. So at the time, like, these two figurines combined were more than a £5, so paying for those via that Champions pack was definitely a wise decision on my behalf. But next up, we have Light Core Bumble Blast. Now one day I was looking at job lots of Skylanders on eBay, and one job lot included this guy for a £5, buy it now. And obviously the seller didn't know the individual value of this character, since he's valued at like about 15 quid alone. So I got very lucky with that job lot, with a very naive seller that obviously didn't know that he was worth more than what the entire job lot was. So I got very happy and very lucky with my Light Core Bumble Blast. But that really does show you that the greatest way to collect Skylanders these days is with patience. Anyway, in yet another Skylanders hunting video, I was able to pick up Boom Jet from another CX after I traded in a few things. I was able to afford this character. And then we have Jade Firecracken and Turbo Jetpack right here, which a friend of mine named Flynn was kind enough to give to me because he bought these back when they first came out, and then I went to his house one time and he just gave me all the Skylanders that I needed, which included these two characters. That was very kind and very generous of him, and I've appreciated him for it ever since. So this brings us to our final Skylander of the collection, which is Nitro Freeze Blade. So, I actually got this guy quite early on because a cousin of mine owned this character, but after he stopped getting into Skylanders as much, I basically offered him a trade, so I gave him some PS3 games in exchange for this Skylander. But basically his parents, I did it without their consent, and they basically forced me to give him the Skylanders back, and I of course got my PS3 games back from all of this, so I lost my Nitro Freeze Blade and had to buy another one from CX, which unfortunately took so long because it took them a really long time to get this guy in stock for whatever reason. But I finally got him and completed my Swap Force collection on the very day that he arrived. So yes, very exciting collection list that barely fits in frame. That's going to make Trap Team pretty hard considering it's an even bigger collection. But we're going to attempt that all the same right after I cut. So now with that cut out of the way, we're as always going to be starting off with the Skylanders from the Trap Team line that don't really have any sort of interesting story behind them besides the fact that at some point I would have bought them. So we're going to be starting off here with a legendary Jawbreaker once again, getting that awesome 360-degree showcase because some idiot, aka me, started with the back of him. But moving on, we have another tech Trapmaster even in the form of Gear Shift. Then we have mini little excellent wee Ruptor. Then there's Nitro Crypt King and all of his glorious glory. Next up is going to be mini little Thumpling. Then there's going to be Trailblazer, one of the most disappointing cores unfortunately. Then there's also Enigma, one of the coolest Trapmasters. Next up we have Love Potion Fizzy Frenzy Pop Fizz, quite the name that one. Then there's also Mini Ginny and Enigma's Fallen Over. Then there's also going to be Spry, followed by High Five, easily my favourite of the designs of the free-to-lay Skylanders, but my favourite overall I would say is probably Batspin, even if her name is kind of weak, but we're going to get to the other free-to-lays later on. For now, we're going to go back to Blades, Legendary Blades to be more exact. Then we also have Gnarly Barkley right here. Then there's also Small Fry right here. Followed by Power Punch Pet Vac, a name that totally rips off the name of Punch Pop Fizz, mind you. Then next up we have Redhead, another awesome core from this game. Then we have Nitro Head Rush right here, followed by not only legendary Deja Vu, but regular Deja Vu as well. It's almost like I had a sense of Deja Vu right there. Regardless, next up is going to be none other than Wee Ruptor. Then we also have Trigger Snappy, followed by Thunderbolt. Then next up we have King Cobra Cadabra, followed up by Eon's Elite Whirlwind. Then we have the meme himself, Rocky Roll. Then we have regular Head Rush, which also came as part of a trade I made with my cousin when I traded the PS3 games for Nitro Freeze Blade, but this one the parents let me keep. It was just for Nitro Freeze Blade specifically that they wanted back because that one was more valuable at the time, but Head Rush however they couldn't care less about. But moving on to Flip Breakout right here, yet another free-to-lay Skylander, which I think sits right in the middle, in terms of the designs anyways. Then we have Blaster Mine, a very disappointing Skylander. I bought him, so excited to play as him, and then I started playing as him, and he was very boring. Anyway, moving on, we have a Full Blast Jetpack. Hopefully I'm not butchering these names as much as I am butchering for camera. Sorry, I kind of jolted it a bit right now. But next up is going to be Drobit. Then we have Tough Luck, which I bought at the same time as I did regular Magna Charge when I went to go see Finding Dory. Go on, Tough Luck, you can fit in there, and if you can't, that's just Tough Luck. But moving on, we have Nightmare, which I actually got nice and cheaply from CX. Was able to get her whole pack for £20, which is really cheap for her pack, even to this day. Anyway, next up is going to be Rigmarole Crypt King. Then next up we have Eon's Elite Chop Chop, followed by I Small. Then we have another Eon's Elite Gilgrunt specifically, followed up by Hijinks. Then we've got Wallop. Then we've got for Mini Little Gilrunt, which I of course got in the same pack as Thumpling, followed by Fling Kong, or as Fling King I sometimes accidentally call him. But yes, luckily moving on, all of the next Skylanders have some very exciting stories to them, including my day one haul, which of course involved the starter pack characters. Not only for them, however, but I also picked up Bushwhack on day one, but I saved £30, which is going to be important for slightly later on in the story. But yes, I got the PS3 starter pack because I'd only just bought up my PS3 after having saved up for it during the Swap Force era. But I got through the first 5 levels and then my PS3 just kind of died and wouldn't turn back on, and when it did, it only stayed on for like 5 minutes, so I wasn't really able to get through much of Trap Team. So that was quite disappointing, especially when I had £30 left and was able to get 2 triple packs. You heard me right, 2. Starting off with a triple pack involving Torch, Gilgrunt and Blades, because that was £15 at the time. And then I also managed to get the triple pack that was also £15, containing Chopper, Funny Bone and Sure Shot Shroom Boom. So that's pretty cool. But unfortunately I still weren't able to play these characters until Christmas. So at Christmas my Skylanders, my parents even, unfortunately didn't bring me any Skylanders. I almost got that the wrong way round. But then my cousins showed up and they had bought me 2 Skylanders yet again, which I really wanted. And I say yet again because these are the same cousins that bought me Fright Rider back when I really wanted him. And the 2 that they bought me were Fist Bump and Wildfire. So yes, it was very cool for both of them to buy these 2 for me. Clearly they had read my mind and knew exactly what Skylanders I had wanted at Christmas. Either that or my parents told them, but I prefer to have the idea that they're sidekicks. And I say I was actually able to play them, that's because at Christmas I visited the same cousins where I was able to get the download code of Trap Team for my Wii U, because he got Skylanders Trap Team on his Wii that Christmas, mind you. But as I digress, that Christmas I also got £40, so I was able to get Jawbreaker alongside yet another triple pack, because Trap Team was when I started caring about triple packs again. And this triple pack contained none other than Cobra, Cadabra, Batspin and Hogwild Frino, which is why I got this version of Frino before I did the regular version. Anyways, so the light and dark characters have just came out, and I see all of them plastered around the section of game. So rather than picking up any of the light or dark Skylanders, I decided to pick up Echo. Yeah, I know, bad decision. But it didn't matter, because a few weeks later I was with my friend Luke and I saw that someone was trading all of their Skylanders to game. So for Christmas of 2014 I got this nice little saving cup, which basically meant that when you put money in you couldn't get it back out until you used a tin opener to open it up. And when I saw that Blackout was available at the game, I ran home immediately with Luke. We opened up the tin, got a bunch of money out, and then went back to game in order to get this Skylander from their pre-owned section. So they literally sold it in a matter of hours. But yeah, sure, I'm glad I managed to save up plenty of money in that tin. And I'm going to talk about 2 other Skylanders I got during that hunting trip later on, because this was during the Superchargers era. But what else did I get during the Superchargers era? Well, I bought the Dark Starter Pack from Skylanders Trap Team, or for Skylanders Trap Team even, from CX, and this was for the Xbox 360. But what was hilarious about this Dark Starter Pack is that it came with the French version of Skylanders Trap Team. So now I only have Skylanders Trap Team on Xbox 360 in French. It doesn't have any other language attached to it, so quite hilarious how I was able to buy a French version of the starter pack. And if I was to go in now to trade it back in, they wouldn't allow me to trade it back in because it's French, despite the fact that they were the ones who sold it to me originally. Not that I attempted that because I love the dark characters a bit too much. Anyway, I remember getting Fizzy Frenzy Pop Fizz so vividly, even because I got them in the same episode of Skylanders Hunting as I did trying to make that inspirational speech to the community a few years back. That went well, didn't it? But as I digress, on the same day I went to Leicester, I returned home and found Eon's Elite Trigger Happy, which was my first Eon's Elite from Trap Team to even collect. So that's why I remember this Trigger Happy specifically so fondly, and that's why I also remember that episode of Skylanders Hunting so fondly as well. Anyway, next up is going to be Kaboom, which I got for £3 from Home Bargains. I went into Home Bargains one day, noticed this guy, and saw the price tag at £3. I was shocked and so happy to receive such an awesome Skylander for such a cheap price, mind you. Anyway, now we return to the Skylanders that Flynn gave me. So you saw beforehand that he gave me Jade Firecracken and Turbo Jetpack, but he also gave me, free of charge, Lobstar, the whole of the Sunscraper Spire expansion pack, which of course involved Nightlight. So a 60 quid pack I got for free. I felt very fortunate and showed a lot of gratitude towards him. We've been very great friends ever since. Like, we was great friends before he gave me the Skylanders, but then he gave me the Skylanders and we was even better friends. Anyway, on top of that, I also got myself Bop and Terabyte from him, so very, very cool there. Anyway, next up, we have another CX find of mine, Spotlight. So I went into CX one day and saw this character was on their store shelves for £8. And I was so happy. Once again, I was internally screaming. Such a rare Skylander for such a cheap price, and locally, so I didn't need to pay no shipping fees or nothing. And it was the only Spotlight that they had in stock in the country at the moment, and it was at my local CX. I was so unbelievably happy. I about screamed then and there in the store. But moving on, I actually got my versions of Breeze and Petvac imported from Germany, because even though they had a really high shipping fee, they were still cheaper than getting them from the UK, mind you, so that was a good deal right there. Anyway, when it comes to Bushwhack, I did just buy him off CX randomly one day, but this was on the online store. And what's so hilarious about this guy is that I accidentally ordered in 2 of him by, well, literally by accident. I said that to begin the story with. And so now I own 2 versions of this guy because I accidentally put in 2 quantity into my shopping basket when I ordered this character. So very stupid mistake on my behalf. But anyway, next up we have Shortcut, which I went to for CX in Leicester to pick up, and a few weeks after that my local CX got about 2 in stock, so not that the trip to Leicester was a waste of time because it made for a very interesting hunting video, mind you. But moving on, it's also the same trip where I got my replacement Smoldered Ash. We got Gusto and Barkley, which I got when I bought the 3DS starter pack for these characters, again from CEX, so very intriguing there. And once again, they were 2 Skylanders that I refused to buy until I got that 3DS starter pack, just like Igniter and Dark Spyro, looping back to that. Anyway, these next few Skylanders were the final Skylanders that I needed to complete my entire collection. Not my Trap Team collection, my entire collection. And that of course started when I ordered a dual pack, so I got a spare Barkley as well as the Whisperell from Trap Team. And these were all made on one of the final episodes of Skylanders Hunting, because I also ordered me one Eon's Elite Spyro, one Eon's Elite Terrafin even, if of course my camera even wants to focus on this guy's glossy finish right there, one Eon's Elite Eruptor, and finally one Eon's Elite Stealth Elf. But that literally does it for my Trap Team collection, and surprisingly they've all managed to fit on frame quite well, so that's gone and shocked me. But what also doesn't shock me is the fact that my camera is currently running really low on battery, so I'm going to charge it up and then I'll see you guys back here for the Superchargers collection. So here we are with my Skylanders Superchargers collection, and as always we are just going to blaze through for figurines that don't have any sort of significant story behind them. It's just that I somehow picked them up somewhere along the road. Road, do you get it? Because Superchargers is all about driving, and you drive on roads. I'm funny. But as I digress, we're going to start off here with the burn cycle. Now, if the lighting is slightly different, that's because whilst my camera battery was charging up, I had to wait overnight, so this is currently the next morning that I'm filming this, mind you. But next up, we have Thrillipede, a pretty rare find for all of you Americans out there, but for us in Europe it was so much more easier for me to get him since I got him at a local CX shop, mind you. Got a bit lost for words right now even. But next up is going to be the Stealth Stinger with all of its awesome details and everything. I've also cleared up more room on my desk because clearly I was needing it. Superchargers is a huge collection, mostly because the vehicles are so big. But next up is going to be none other than Mistletoe Diveclops, followed by the Tomb Buggy right here in all of its glorious glory. I love the fact that you can drive these vehicles around. It's very cool that rather than giving them bases, they put the NFC chips inside of them. But as I digress, our next Skylander is going to be Splat. Then we also have the Power Blue Gold Rusher right there. I can barely kind of squeeze it down there, mind you. So next up is going to be the Supercharger combination right there with Power Blue Double Dare Trick Happy, which is also quite a mouthful in terms of variants names. So following him up is going to be none other than Smash It, and of course those two were a Supercharger combination, which is why I made that mention even. So next up is going to be regular Diveclops right here, so we can go right next to his Mistletoe counterpart. Then we also have legendary Hurricane Jetpack. Don't know what was so special about Jetpack to warrant him getting two legendaries, but here we are. And speaking of Hurricane Jetpacks, we have the regular iteration right here. Then next up we have none other than High Volt, followed by my least favourite vehicle, unfortunately, the Thump Truck. And then next up is going to be the Dive Bomber. Gonna put that right next to the Thump Truck. Following that is going to be yet another sea vehicle, the Splatter Splasher. Then we have none other than Egg Sighting Thrillipede. Unfortunately, the name in this pun isn't nearly as egg sighting as the writers thought it would be. Ha ha ha. But moving on, we also have one Dark Turbocharged Donkey Kong, followed by Lava Lance Eruptor, followed by Big Bubble Pop Fizz, followed by the Soda Skimmer. Once again, we have the vehicle coming up right after its Supercharger. Next up is going to be Bone Bash Roller Brawl right here. If of course Chief wants to squeeze in along with the other characters, her hair is kind of getting in the way. But moving on, we have the Shield Striker, or is it Shield Shredder? I don't know, I always get the two mixed up. Like, why did they choose such damn similar names? But next up is going to be none other than Fiesta, followed by this Golden Hot Streak, which was from eBay for £16 approximately, and a very good price for such a rare vehicle, and it's so damn cool it is Golden Game as well. I love that in-game translation. But next up is going to be the Nitro Stealth Stinger. Following that up is going to be none other than legendary Bone Bash Roller Brawl. Then next up we're going to have the Power Blue Splatter Splasher, followed up by the Dark Barrel Blaster. Then we're also going to have the Springerhead Dive Bomber, going up last but not least. So now we get to move on to the characters that do have really exciting stories behind them. And so first of all it's going to be the Skylanders Superchargers Dark Edition Starter Pack for the Xbox 360. So I did get these in day one, and that would obviously include Spitfire, well Dark Spitfire more specifically, Dark Super Shot Stealth Elf right here. Then that would also include the Dark Hot Streak, and finally for Dark Sea Shadow. But on day one I also managed to pick up Steel Plated Smash Hit, from Tesco because it was like £13, so it was very cheap and I really wanted that variant at the time. And then I also got the Sky Slicer. My mum bought me for this when we went to go and get the Dark Starter Pack, so that then I could 100% the game right off the bat. But anyways, what makes this story so interesting is that the Dark Edition for Xbox 360, when I went to go and pre-order it, I actually wanted the Wii U edition, but my local game had ran out of pre-orders for that, so I weren't able to get the Wii U edition, most unfortunately. So my mum jumped in and asked if they had any Xbox 360 instead. They said yes, but I wound up getting confused by the fact that I didn't own an Xbox 360 at that time. So my mum, once we got out of the store and I confronted her about it, being like, but I don't have an Xbox 360, my mum said, your cousin's getting it you for your birthday. And then I'm like, wow, that's so awesome. And that's because these are the same cousins that bought me for Christmas Fright Rider, Wildfire and Fist Bump years prior. So it's so damn cool that they was giving me an Xbox 360. It's very, very funny how that was spoiled to me because of Skylanders Superchargers and game not having the Dark Edition for Wii U, mind you. But as I digress, Game was having a big sale one day, and so all of their triple packs effectively were only £3. So I was able to pick up one of them concerning the Jetstream, the Shark Tank, and the one, the only Sharpshooter Terrafin. And these were so cheap at only £3 each that I actually had to confront one of the staff members to double check that these were actually £3 before taking them to the till. But regardless, I also managed to pick up on that very day the Sea Racing packs that came with Deep Dive, Gilgrunt, and of course the Reef Ripper right here. Very cool, and I love the fact that once again you get the opportunity to play around with that. But moving on the same day that I got my pre-owned Blackout I was talking about during Trap Team, I also managed to pick up 2 Superchargers, one of which was none other than Stormblade, and the other was Nightfall, so that's very, very cool. I got 2 Dark characters on the same day. So next up, I went to Tesco one morning and they had all of the starter packs for £21, which was incredibly cheap, so I wound up picking up on that day the regular Wii U starter pack, which of course came with Super Shot Stealth Elf, the Barrel Blaster, and turbocharged Donkey Kong, as you can see right there, with his smug little smile. But moving on, one time from CX I did an online order for the Land Racing pack, but they accidentally sent me instead for Legendary Iteration, which of course included for Legendary Sunrunner and Legendary Astro Blast himself, and these were more expensive from the store at the time, so I was rather quite happy to have been sent these by total accident. Of course, I still needed regular Astro Blast, but that's going to come into play later on. For now, we're going to look back towards the beginnings of Skylanders hunting, where one of the very first finds I got was none other than Frightful Fiesta, in the pre-owned section even from game. And in that very same episode I was also able to pick myself up the Nitro Soda Skimmer. The choice at the time was either the Nitro Soda Skimmer or Thrillipede that you see back there, but either way I was going to wind up with them both, so that decision right then and there didn't exactly change the course of my hunting career, you could say. So no regrets. But as I digress, in what was originally the 3rd episode of Skylanders Hunting, where I went to Nottingham with Luke for the first time, that has since been added onto the 1st episode, I managed to pick up this guy at that said Nottingham trip, and I remember getting this guy very specifically because Luke told me that you're never going to get anything rare, and then literally that same hunting trip I got some pretty rare Skylanders. Not only did I get Big Bubble Pop Fizz, but I also managed to get on that trip E3 Hot Streak. But what was really ironic about this is that a few weeks later, Games sent me this same figurine brand new in the box, so I wound up selling the brand new version for it on eBay for about 100 quid. So I turned a nice profit with that, especially since this pre-owned figure cost me about £7 from the store, so technically that's like a £92 profit right there. So now let's be popping them in with the rest of the crew. And moving on to the Crypt Crusher, which I got in another episode of Skylanders Hunting, the very same one as I got Boomjet from, mind you. Then next up, we went to Leicester, and by we I mean me, and I went to Smith's Toy Superstore specifically that was absolutely topped with Skylanders for a Grave Clobber, but that was where I managed to pick up the regular Sky Racing pack, so I got regular Astro Blast and regular Sunrunner, so I finally managed to pick those up and add those to my collection as well. But next up is going to be the hunting trip just before my black belt grading. There was no better way for me to prepare my black belt for my black belt grading even than to go hunting for Skylanders, and I managed to find myself one regular Spitfire and regular Hot Streak, which I both didn't own at the time, on the pre-owned section at Game. And then I was also able to pick up a Sea Shadow for, I think it was $1.99 at the time, because Imaginators had came out and it was really trying to get rid of these vehicles. And one time I also managed to pick up the Buzzwing from CEX for about $5, I think I paid for it, and this was the same hunting trip that I got Super Smash Bros. Ultimate for. So very cool find right there. And then one other trip I went to Leicester, this is once again another Skylanders hunting video, to pick up a shortcut from their local CX, and I also managed to pick up on that very day a Power Blue Splat. And what was really funny about this is that they brought out a tub of Skylanders. They just had a bunch of them, and I was looking for the Skylanders which I had asked to purchase, and when it came to Power Blue Splat, I saw one in the tub that was completely missing her weapon altogether, and I was a bit worried that this was the only one they had in stock and I'd have to redact the purchase and get her online, you know, so I could get a figurine in good condition. But as I kept looking through the box, they had additional ones in stock, so I was able to pick up one that was really good in condition, so that was cool. And now we bring ourselves to both regular Hammer Slam Bowser and for Clown Cruiser. So this is when I got Skylanders Superchargers Racing for the Wii, because of course this was the only way, that was the only way even to get those figures. But Superchargers is notorious for making you having got several starter packs if you wanted to own everything. So I didn't only buy one starter pack for the Skylanders Superchargers Racing on the Wii, I bought two so I could also get the Dark Edition of those two characters with Dark Hammer Slam Bowser and his Dark Clown Cruiser in hand for you right there. So that leaves two more Skylanders until the entire collection is completed. My apologies about that cut right there, my card ran out of storage space, but as I digress, what happened next is that I was able to pick up both Double Dare Trigger Happy and his vehicle for Gold Rusher in the 39th episode of Skylanders Hunting, the second to last one mind you, because Double Dare Trigger Happy I travelled all the way to Sutton in Ashfield for, which turned out quite good on my behalf, because it was only 2 buses away and I was actually able to dig out the figure, unlike other CX stores which always tend to lose them. And this CX in particular had like 6 billion different Trigger Happies, so I'm glad they had for one that I was looking for specifically. But then when it came to the Gold Rusher, I did my longest cycle ever at an entire 7 miles in order to get to the CX at Corville, which is my second most local CX, as well as it is my second most local Argos, as I've mentioned about prior. But it was very cool to have cycled that far and to have been rewarded for said exercise with the Gold Rusher towards the very end of Skylanders Hunting right there. But that basically does it for the Superchargers collection. It barely all fits in frame right here, so that's why I'm kind of glad I pushed the switch and the speakers back a little bit. But now it's time to move on to the final game of the franchise, Imaginators. Before we move on to the final game of Imaginators, I do first want to mention a few Skylanders that I completely missed out on whilst I was going through their individual games, and that starts off with Series 2 Zook, a Skylander which I bought at a Cash Converters store alongside Mega Ram Spyros specifically. Then there was also Winterfest Lobstar, which I bought pre-owned at a CEX around for Christmas season of 2015 because it was appropriate. But moving on, I'm going to be talking to you first of all about 4 specific Eons Elites from Superchargers, and that starts off with Eons Elite Slambam, Eons Elite Zook. I'm just really good at forgetting about the Zooks apparently. Then that's also going to include Eons Elite Boomer, and last but not least Eons Elite Voodoo. So for Christmas of 2015 I got £60 from relatives, which I was able to get these 4 characters with for £15 each, but literally just a few weeks later all of the elites were reduced to £3 each, so I literally could have saved £12 per elite if I had just waited a few weeks, so that was a big whoopsie. But as I digress, during those sales I was able to pick up Eon's Elite Dynarang and Eon's Elite Ghost Roaster. Now I think the main reason why I rushed into getting all of the other elites so much was because at the time I never saw an elite from Trap Team on game store shelves, so I was just very excited to finally see an elite in the form of a Superchargers line on the shelves and really wanted to get my hand in some of that OP glory, mind you. But without further ado, let's get to Imaginators. Okay, so now with that quick little interlude out of the way, I can return my setup back to the norm because the Skylanders Imaginators collection is slightly smaller than the 3 preceding it. So as always, we're going to start off with the Senseis, which don't really have much of an interesting story behind them besides the fact that I bought them at some point. And we're going to start off with Tri-Tip, or Legendary Tri-Tip more specifically, and this one is quite interesting actually because I remember seeing him in the pre-owned section at Game once. I can't speak right now, but point is I was unable to afford him at the time, and my friend Faray was with me and he didn't have any money on him either, so he really regretted not being able to buy this character for me. But I told him there was no feelings or no hard feelings about it even, and there really wasn't. He didn't need to do that for me, but it was really kind and generous of him to think of me when we saw that figurine, and you know, it would have been very generous as well for him to have bought it. But it's a thought that counts, and I appreciated him a whole lot more for that, but we'll talk about Faray again later. For now, we're going to move on to Candy Coated Chopscotch, which I actually bought from the same CX that I did my Light Core Chill, so I completed my Giants collection on that day and got 1 Candy Coated Chopscotch along the way. Then next up is going to be none other than Legendary Pit Boss. Then we're going to have regular Hoodsicle, followed immediately by me punching the camera once again, but then it's actually going to be steel-plated Hoodsicle. I actually bought these 2 in the exact same order, so very interesting how I got 2 Hoodsicles at once. In fact, I got both of the Hoodsicles at once, technically speaking. But next up we have none other than Pinata. Moving on to Jingle Bells Chompy Mage, the boring Christmas easy to find edition of him. Then next up we have ourselves 1 Airstrike. Then we also have Starcast right here, followed by 1 Solar Flare Aurora, which I got from Amazon. Very interesting figurine, this one, to say the least. Then we also got right here 2 more to go, starting off with Chain Reaction, and then we're going to be finishing with Chopscotch. So now we can move on into the stories. So first of all is going to be my day 1 haul, which of course I started off with a Wii U Dark Edition, so that came with Dark Kingpin, Dark Wolfgang, and then Dark Golden Queen to go alongside them all. Then we also have, then I also bought, even with money that I was saving up at the time, 3 additional Senseis, which included Ember, as you can see right there, alongside Ambush, and Tri-Tip, as you can see right here. And then I also got a little pre-order bonus in the form of Chaos at the time, so yeah, that was very, very cool indeed. Obviously he really does not fit in with the rest of the Skylanders now that I think about it, but regardless, so just before Christmas came around, the 3rd wave of Imaginators hit, which meant that of course I could get my hands on a few Wave 3 characters such as Flarewolf and Buckshot, which were easily my most hyped characters from the whole of Wave 3, so I was very happy to get my hands on them quite easily indeed. But as I digress, after Christmas I got a bunch of money and I used that whilst game had a 3 for 2 offer, so I got 6 Senseis, one of which was the regular version of Bad Juju. And then as another villain, I also got Wolfgang. Now what was really cool is that originally I had a fire creation crystal, but one of the game employees said, are you sure you want to get a fire creation crystal, because you could get a free sensei rather than getting a free creation crystal. I'm like, no, you didn't have any others that I needed. And then one of them said that they had a regular Wolfgang in storage, so I was like, oh wait, I need that one. So they went back into the storage to go get that for me. So that shows a sharp contrast between the previous game employees I've talked about from my Giant stories, mind you, so it's really great to have seen that. But regardless, during that I also managed to get myself Barbella, Boom Bloom, which her whole pack, the Enchanted Elfin Forest, were the same price as a regular old Sensei pack, so I got that for 15 quid. Mostly because they weren't selling very well that Christmas season. Then there's also Aurora right here, who I also managed to pick up. And then last but not least, there was the biggest surprise of the bunch, Mr. Cat. Well, I say the biggest surprise right behind Barbella. Anyway, now we return to Farah right here. So me and Farah saw a movie after school had restarted around February time-ish. And this movie was called Arrival. Very good movie, that I'd really recommend it. But after we saw the film, we went to our local Argos and I saw that they had this character Tycoon Crow in stock, and Farah was generous enough to buy this character for me because I didn't have enough money left at the time to get it myself. So it was very cool that Farah bought this figurine for me, and whenever I look at this figurine it reminds me of him. So very special figurine of mine, that one. But next up we have the time when Skylanders hunting started, so that begun, and this is one entire year later by the way. That would have been no, not an entire year later, about a month later actually, where Tycoon Crow would have been February of 2017, and then this would have been late February of 2017, so literally I got that guy just before I started filming for YouTube. But as I digress, I got Mystical Bad Juju in Toys R Us on the same hunting trip that I got my Big Bubble Pop Fizz, my birthday bash Big Bubble Pop Fizz from, even, as well as for E3 Hot Streak that I was talking about before, my Superchargers haul. So yeah, very interesting how he went to Nottingham. Luke didn't expect me to find anything, and I found this rare figurine along with the other two I just mentioned. And on that hunting trip I also got a sent from game, because I was still a Skylanders Rewards member, I got sent in the mail a voucher for a free Sensei. So I went to a second game that there was at Nottingham, something that I didn't film, and I managed to pick up a mystical Tycoon Crow for free because of that. So yeah, that was really, really cool. But as we move on, a few weeks later I managed to find myself one Dr. Crankcase at Argos once again for Skylanders hunting, and I was looking for this guy in specific because he was the last element and last battle class that I needed for the Senseis and Imaginators. So very good hunting trip when I managed to acquire that character. But unfortunately on that trip I also came across the Wave 5 Skylanders, which were put on store shelves a little early, but at the time I didn't have enough money for them. Luckily for me, this was around the time where I did some painting for the neighbours, and they was paying me in weekly chunks, so I only had to wait 1 week until I got an additional payment and was able to buy for both of these. So that was really cool. I got these Wave 5 characters very early before they even launched in America, and that was my main aim. But sticking with Skylanders hunting, another character I managed to get during that series run was on Pancake Day. I found Pit Boss at my local CEX. That was pretty cool, mind you. Then when I travelled to Leicester, not only did I find the Sky Racing pack from Superchargers, but I also found at Smith's Toys Superstore's Grave Clobber, who was only a £5, and I remember getting this one very, very specifically because that Smith's Toys Superstores had spent over 10 minutes, well not even 10 minutes, I think it was over an hour. I'm very bad at judging the time, as you can tell from when I was talking about Tycoon Crow before, but as I digressed, they'd spent about an hour looking for this character, and the whole time the case with his character in it was behind the manager's desk. But they were dedicated and would not stop until they found me this Skylander, and so once they finally managed to bring it to me and they had located it, I was so happy, and I was glad that they never gave up on finding the Skylander, so that was very, very cool of them. But as I digress, once again I was sent in for post some vouchers for some free Senseis, but this time around I was able to get 2 entire characters for free, so I managed to get from that both of the Easter characters. So yeah, I got Hard-Boiled Flare Wolf even, and Egg Bomber Airstrike from that. Very, very cool. Although I only have, as of recently, got the Soul Gem for Egg Bomb Airstrike, because I have, as of only recently, got the Griffin Park Observatory. But as I digress, we're now jumping from Easter of 2017 to Christmas of 2017, when I got a Nintendo Switch, and with my Christmas money I was looking to get new Switch games rather than buy some more Skylanders, but that didn't stop me from picking up the Nintendo Switch starter pack for Skylanders Imaginators. And I asked the people at the cashier how much the starter pack was going to cost me, and when they said £15, I was shocked. It was so cheap, and I was so happy to have picked up Imaginators for the Switch at that time, and have even got myself Kingpin and Golden Queen, as you saw before you. But now that leaves the final 3 Skylanders of the collection, and they just so happen to be the most expensive 3. So the first one I got from the bunch was Robo, because Nolan Dick from Portal Master, this is one of his favourite Skylanders, and he was telling me for ages that I should hurry up and get my hands on this guy, so I was able to get him from eBay for about £55. Not terrible value, mind you. But I still was missing 2 of them. So next up came the Cursed Tiki Temple, which I got for £55 as well. It was hilariously the same seller. Of course, I got that a few months later because I had to save up my money once again. But finally, I needed one last Skylander, that one rare and elusive green Chompy Mage. And I tell you what, when I was able to buy him at long last, I got so excited, because this was one of my last characters from Imaginator, sure, but also after I got this character, I think I only needed 5 more Skylanders, which were the 5 from Trap Team that I was talking about previously. And he may have cost me £60, but he came all the way from Germany, so a grand majority of that was from the shipping. But I was so happy to get my hands on this guy at basically an incredible price, because you take away the shipping, you're paying £50 for that character, which is near enough a bargain. So yes, that completed my Skylanders Imaginators collection, and very nearly completed my entire Skylanders collection. But at that, this here collection video is coming to an end. We're going to do one final cut though before I finish off the video. We might be at this shot once again, but I have made a terrible mistake, and I have managed to somehow forget Crash Bandicoot and Dr. Neo Cortex when I was talking about the Imaginators. So the interesting story behind these guys is that when I first bought their dual pack off Amazon, both of them came broken, because the Dr. Neo Cortex was weighted at the back, so it kept tipping over. And then the Crash Bandicoot was missing a nose. So what wound up happening is that from eBay I had ordered for 2 characters loose, but the seller couldn't find the Crash Bandicoot in their stores, so they sent me for a replacement Dr. Neo Cortex absolutely free, because they couldn't find the extra one. So I got the refund for the pack, and they sent for Dr. Neo Cortex anyway. Very nice of them, that. And then when it came to Crash Bandicoot, this replacement figure you see before you was yet again another purchase from CEX when it was Black Friday, so I was able to pick him up for like a £5. So a replacement Sensei for that cheap was definitely a bargain worth getting, mind you. But now we can return back to this glorious shelf. I'm not sure how much I was actually in the shot right there, but regardless, this is every single in-game Skylander, starting at the top where we have the Spyros and Crash Bandicoot and the Nintendo characters. Then we move down to Spyro's Adventure and Giants, Swap Force, Trap Team, Superchargers, Imaginators, and then we've got all of the variants and the magic items down the bottom. Now I chose not to give the magic items their own showpieces, because all of the stories that they come attached with came with the Skylanders that came in all their packs and everything. So I own all of those. It's just really the traps that I don't own all of, but I'm not interested enough in the traps to dish out, you know, tens of pounds per one I'm missing, because I'm missing the rare ones in this case, like of course the Dark Bunny, or worse yet, the Life, Light and Fire Screamers. But yes, this is a very grand collection. I'm so glad I spent so long organising it, because this way it looks so glorious, and I'm glad I was able to share it with you guys today for 250 subscribers. But at that, this video is indeed coming to an end, with all of the stories and the collections having been expressed. So I'll be seeing you guys in another video. Until that moment arises, peace.